Oh, there we go. Much better. Now it makes sense that everybody in the front row was nodding and no one else responded. That makes sense. Okay. All right, let's try this again. My name is Dan Card. I'm a senior developer for Ortus Solutions. I've been using Cold Fusion since around 2003. Done a wide variety of different jobs that are kind of boring, so I won't go into them now. Not for Ortus. Those were amazing and exciting. Where's Luis? Okay. I also have been using React for about 4 or 5 years. Done a couple major projects on it, including one that was more of a tech project, including some video and WebSocket things, which was really kind of fun. I live in the Boston area in the US, and let's go ahead and dive in. This is React and CFML, a natural fit. Okay, so here's a couple things. I have a question for everyone in here. Who has used what? How many of you have never used React before? Perfect. You're my audience. This is awesome. Okay, that's who I wrote this for. That's fantastic. Okay, how many of you have ever used or have never used Coldbox to build an API before? Totally fine too. You are also my audience. Okay, so if you're experts at both of those, the other one is really good. But stay. It'll be fun. Okay, it's possible to do an incredible deep dive on both of these products. Okay, they're powerful, they're complicated. Well, they're easy to start. Complicated, they're powerful. We're not going to do that. We're going to kind of stay near the shallow end on purpose to show how these two things can work together. Okay, this is also not a best practices session. Just want to let you know. This is a get it working, get the basics, and go from there. Now, also a quick thing. I'm from the East Coast of the US. We talk very fast, and I've been told that I talk faster than most. So I am not going to be offended if people like raise their hand, wave. If you need to throw something soft, preferably, that would be great. But remind me to slow down. I am not going to be offended. And so if you already know me, I'm going to put a special task on you to kind of wave and just let me know if I'm going too fast, and we'll go from there. But if you don't know me, please let me know. Okay. Okay. So we also have another choice today. This is one of those true confession Oprah kind of moments where about half an hour ago, I went to go try everything that I was going to do today and was feeling very confident, I had everything set. And I had done some refactoring the last day or so about my demo site, and literally nothing was working, okay? Which was always very encouraging when you're going to go give a presentation in 20 minutes, okay? I figured out why, and I figured out everything else. But here's a question for you. I'm going to give you guys a choice, okay? This is like an audience participation poll, okay? I have a fully working site that I can walk through and very, confidently point to things and say, this is why I did this. Or we can do what my original project was, which was going to be start from scratch and build it as we go. And that one's going to be a little more of a roller coaster, but we can have a lot of fun with it. So here's my question for you. I'm getting a lot of nods. Okay, good. So basically what they're saying is make a fool of yourself on tape, and we'll show it to your boss. That sounds great. Okay, let's do that. We'll do what I was going to do originally, which is we'll just do a live coding session, and we'll go from there. Here's what we're going to be building, okay? Now, this is the front end of our React site. Now, a couple things I need to get out of the way very quickly. One, this is very ugly. Okay, I'm not a visual designer. I don't pretend to be. In fact, I shy away from that role whenever I can because I'm just not good at it, okay? But here's what this site's gonna do. I don't know if you have ever seen the TV show American Ninja Warrior or American Ninja Warrior Jr. So it's a really sophisticated obstacle course that kids and adults can go through, okay? It's swinging, it's climbing, it's running, it's jumping, and there are ninja gyms all over the country in the US where kids go and they do this. And this is an app that's designed to track what level they are on these different skills. So we have about 4 students over here, Tracy, Timmy, Paul, and Jackson, okay? And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 skills that they're all working on. We have the box jump, rings, rock wall, rope climb, and spider crawl, okay? Those are skills that they can get levels on. If they do something well, at a very low level, they get level 1, and so on and so forth. They also have a general, and the vault. Sorry. So we're going to build an app that actually does this. It has 3 API calls, one for all the students, one for all the skills, and then one for their points, okay? And the front end is going to be in React. Does that make sense? Any questions? You guys good? Okay. All right. Well, in that case, if you want, these are, and I'll talk about this at the end too. We have a couple this is the fully working demo site. And I'll give you guys the this at the end also, so if you want to go home and install it, you can. But in the meantime, let's minimize all those and let's just get started. Okay, so in my, let's see, experiments, glasses, okay. We're gonna make a new folder here, and in that folder it's gonna be CFCamp 23 presentation. You're like, this is great, the guy can't even type, nice, okay? And in it, we're gonna make two sites, our two folders. One of them is gonna be our API, and the other one's gonna be our app. And by app, I mean the React front end, and I forgot to chart my timer, okay. Okay. React is obviously a JavaScript front end. One of the questions I got at lunch is that somebody was kind of confused. Eric from Ortus was talking on Vue. I'm speaking on React, and they said, what is the Ortus library of choice? There really isn't one, okay? We use Vue, we use Quasar. We don't have a lot of React projects. That's more of my little pet thing that I was using for a long time before I joined Ortus. So there really is no Ortus library that we kind of say, use this. It's whatever you know, whatever the project demands, and whatever you're gonna go for. Just thought I'd get that out of the way quickly while I remembered. All right. In order to develop a React site, you need to have Node installed. We're not going to install Node. That takes a little bit, but you can just download it off the website. It also helps to have a package manager. It's either something called NPM, which actually installs with Node, or something called Yarn, which you can install separately. What those do is they help you manage packages from the kind of master Node repository in the sky, okay? Once you get that installed, we're going to change over to our folders. Where did I actually do that? There we go. Sites, experiments, camp, CFCamp. Okay, here we go. Experiments, CFCamp 2023 presentation. And we're going to now go into app. Okay, to get started with this, we're going to use something called Create React App. And we're going to run it with something called npx. That also comes installed with Node, okay? The reason why we're doing this is, for those of you that are relatively new to JavaScript applications, you'll start learning a lot about how other programming languages work besides Cold Fusion. That sounds kind of stupid, but there's things built into Cold Fusion or CFML that we take for granted. For example, when we change a file in CFML and we hit refresh, it just shows up. It's the great thing. What we don't always appreciate is that in that instant after we change the file, the Java library or the Java runtime read it, or one of the magic things behind the scenes, may not be the Java one and everything else, but Lucy or the Adobe Cold Fusion server read that file, saw that it changed, compiled it down to Java bytecode, and then read it off, and then it opened, okay? In JavaScript, that isn't necessarily how it happens. It also is amazing in JavaScript is that the amount of work and files, let me actually get this going, that it takes to actually get some text on the screen is pretty phenomenal, okay? So there's a lot of pre-processing that happens when you build a React app. And this Create React App basically went through and said, we don't want to bother with all that. The configuration for all those things is insane. Here's an easy way to get started. So we're going to use that. All right, Create React App, and this is just going to be CFCamp. All right, so what this is doing now is it's not in this registry. You guys got to realize I literally did this 5 minutes ago, like from scratch, okay? So I'm confused. npx. Oh, let's try that. That sounds good. I can feel the confidence welling from the audience right now that this guy knows what he's talking about. Thank you. All right, stashes, not underscores. What this is doing now is it's going up to the Create React, or to probably NPM, the registry. It's grabbing a bunch of templates, and I'll show you what it's creating in a minute. This is going to take a few seconds, but this is our scaffolding up our front end. All right, I'm going to jump over to command box. All right. If you've never used command box, by all means, grab someone that has used it a lot and get a quick primer on it. It is just an amazing tool. Excuse me. Okay, so we have command box opened up. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go over towards its sites. This was an experiment. And we're going to go into the API folder, which is empty. And I'm going to go ahead and run the ColdBox app, which is going to scaffold out a ColdBox API framework for us. So ColdBox, create app. Now what this is going to do is it's building up a ColdBox app based on the REST API. ColdBox is pretty versatile. If you haven't used it before, it's a really cool library. And we're going to walk through actually how to build a quick API in it. Okay. There we go, experiments. Oh, I already did that. There's my API. So the API one is done, and I'm going to open it up in IntelliJ because I use that. All you VS Code people that say it's awesome, I agree with you. VS Code is amazing. I don't use it yet, and that's fine. All right. Here is this. We're going to open that up in a new window. Okay, so when we scaffolded it out, we scaffolded out our Create React app. Not Create React app. This is the ColdBox one. I can't zoom in on the file side over here. Again, I hear the VS Code people saying, well, I can. I understand. I got that. Okay. Over here, there's three main pieces to the API that we're going to work with. Okay. One is called routes. The other one is called a handler. And the third one is called a model. Okay. Basically, it's when a response comes in to ColdBox, we're not hitting a file per se. It gets intercepted by the framework, and it says, okay, this is a route. All right, and so we're going to define 3 routes that are going to give us some data and return it back up to our API. Okay, let's check and see how Create React app is doing. All right, that's done. Perfect. Okay, we're going to come back to that, and we are going to, let's see, npm install Axios. We have to install I'm going to install one more library, and then we're done. Okay. Now, what's neat about this is you do not need Node installed to host a React app, but you do need it installed to edit a React app. And we're going to do something here called yarn start. Okay? This is built into the Create React app. Just kidding. We're going to do a directory. We're going to go into my CFCamp folder, and now we're going to do yarn. Now we're actually going to install npm like I wanted, or not npm, but Axios. Oh my goodness, I'm having a great day. Okay. All right, there we go. Now, yarn start. Okay, what this is doing is it's spinning up a development app. It's running on the local machine on port 3000. If you get this, great, fantastic. This is the test site that comes built into Create React app. If you see this, your app is working, which is great. Okay, let's jump over into IntelliJ and let's look and see what that gave us. Here we go, app, show more options. We want that in a new window. Okay, so a couple key things that are here. All right, again, I apologize that I can't zoom in on the file system, but here's what happened. There is a folder over here called public. And that is where your index.html file is. That's where anything that you want to add to your public HTML, standard stuff like libraries, Bootstrap, everything else goes in there. If I go in here in public, I can open up that index page, and there's really nothing to it. Okay? There is one major div that's called root, and that's where our app is going to go. We do need to add one thing in here, which is get Bootstrap. We're going to grab the CDN for that. And we're going to put it here in the head because we're going to use Bootstrap. Like I said, I am not a visual designer whatsoever. So where do we go? Go to Bootstrap for that. All right. Save. Okay. Is that still going? Good. Now, a nice thing about also working with this is that when we edit that testing server that's built in Node, whenever we make a change in one of our files, it automatically picks up on it and loads it. So if I open up this file called app.js, if you look on the main thing in here, it says, hey, edit source app.js and save to reload. Let's try that. So we're going to go to app.js, zoom in on this, because even though I know VS Code can do that too, so can I. Nice. Bigger font, notice. Excellent. Okay. This div on here, everything from the class name equals app and div. Notice there's no quotes around it. It isn't a string. It is actually HTML. Okay? This is a thing called JSX, which is a very cool acronym that I forget what it stands for, but it's the idea basically that we can write HTML directly in our JavaScript, and it will pick it up and display it on the screen. So if I get rid of all of this, and I just do div hi, and then close it, it does have to be syntactically accurate HTML, and I go over here, my thing is gone, and it just says hi in the corner, okay? So it's picking up my HTML automatically. Well, let's do this. H1, welcome to Ninja. Excellent, okay? That work? Perfect, so far so good. All right, yeah, that was kind of quick, so I'll let you admire. Okay, there we go. All right, we're gonna add a table to this, and in that we're gonna add a head, and we're going to then add a row, and we're going to say in the first cell, student name. Because if we go back over to our presentation, we can see right here that we have student right here, and then we have the skills across the top. Now we got to jump over and actually get the data from our API. Okay, so we're going to put a pin. Oh, hold on, I have some red lines here. Why is that? Oh, here's the problem that I ran into. Okay, any JSX segment has to be a fully contained HTML thing. There are things called fragments. If you're React experienced, I understand that. We're not going to do that. We're going to focus on having our JSX be really good, self-contained, well-formed HTML. So I need to add a div, class name equals container. And we're going to do that. And now we have a self-contained HTML tag. And if we go back over here, we can see that we have the beginning of our table as well. Good. Now let's go back over and build our API. Okay. So putting a pin in React, going back over to Coldbox, okay? Coldbox, again, if you're Coldbox experienced, we're not gonna build an actual module for this. We're gonna build it right in the main level of the Coldbox app. Okay, Coldbox has a config folder. In that config folder, there's something called a router, okay? If you've ever used any other programs that uses this, you know that we're basically defining when something comes in, a request comes in, if it identifies as, it sounds like never mind. Basically, if it identifies that route, it knows what to do with it. And we're gonna make one route here. It's gonna be a get request. Yep, good call. It's gonna be, by the way, how am I doing speed-wise? Am I talking too fast, too slow? You guys bored? Good? All right, cool. All right. Actually, I guess bored and talking too fast are two different questions. Answer the fast one. If you're bored, take a nap, have a good time. It's cool. Okay, we're gonna put our route in here, route, and it is just gonna be simply skills. Now, when skills comes in, what do we want it to actually do? We want it to run a handler. And that handler, we're just gonna give it a name of skills. And in that's just a CFC. And in that CFC, it's gonna have a function. We're gonna call it index. Now, some of that is by convention, okay? So the reason why I don't have to put any kind of an actual full path in there is that Coldbox is gonna say, if this is a handler, which is what it's expecting, it is gonna be in my handler folder, and it is gonna be a CFC. So I'm gonna create one of those right now. We have a CFC component. I'm gonna call it skills, okay? And I'm gonna do two things. One, I'm gonna have it extend the Coldbox system REST handler. Does it have to do that? No, but there's stuff that's built into that will make making your API a lot more simple, okay? If you're a purist and you don't want any help, that's fine. You don't gotta extend anything. You can do it right from scratch all by yourself. I also have a manual shift and a butter churn that you can use as well. It's totally fine, whatever you wanna do. Okay, in here, I am going to make a function called, that was a comedian I saw one time said that line. I just, for some reason, thought it was appropriate then. I'm not quite sure why. You can do whatever you'd like with your Coldbox, and I applaud that. Let us know how we can help. Okay, function index. That index is going to receive three things. It's going to receive an event, which is kind of a massive component that has a lot of pieces in it. Usually we don't have to touch it directly, but it comes in. The second thing, it's going to receive the request context. The request context is everything that came from the user. Form scope, URL scope, a couple of things are all built in those, but those are the most common things that are referred. And the last thing is the private request scope. Now the difference here is that your RC is a struct that has all the stuff from your user. The PRC is the private scope. That's all stuff that comes from your code. Now, the reason why that's there and separated out is because we don't want to trust anything in the RC. That came from the outside. It could be anything, okay? We don't want to trust it, but we want to know what we can trust, and if we can trust our code, that's in the PRC. That's why it's separated out. Normally in this handler, we would also handle things like authentication, we would do authorization, we would do any data sanitation that we wanted to do, validation, lots of other Asians and stuff that you can do. We're not gonna do that right now because we have a time crunch, and so we are just going to do something simple right now. And we are going to return just some simple data, okay? PRC is the private scope. In that, there is a response component, and we're gonna set data, and at the moment, we're just gonna have it say hi. I like things simple, okay? Let's get it wired up, and then we'll actually put some data in there. For the moment, we're done with this. We're not gonna do anything more complicated. We're gonna save it, and one thing I did not do is I'm actually gonna start the server, okay? So, we saw how we added all these folders. I'm gonna do one more thing. I don't like remembering like IPs and ports, okay? So one of the things that's built into ColdBox, there's a plugin called the Command Box Host Updater, and I'm just gonna give this a nice API name. So I'm gonna say server set, that was helpful, server set web.host equals ninja API.local. I actually do not need to quote. I'm trying to make it bigger, but it keeps commenting, defaulting down for me, so I'm just gonna do that, reset it. Okay, ninja API.local, return. I'm also gonna hit server set web.http.port equals 80. Now, what did that do? Created a JSON file on here that gives us a little bit of configuration, and now I'm gonna hit server start. And while that is starting up, I'm gonna take a quick sip of, I keep saying Coke, it's Pepsi. I'm real glad that they have Pepsi products. I really wish they had Mountain Dew. Just kind of a general thought for future reference. Anyway, okay, this is starting up. Fantastic. While that's starting, this will open up in a second in a browser. Here we go. Notice we have our Ninja app local up on top. There is no port afterwards, and we get the default ColdBox API, which is fantastic, okay? Let's see what happens when we actually hit our skills route. Okay, we get back a struct, and in it, we can see some data about this. One is our data is the word hi. That's what we expect, okay? We have an error, false, always a good thing. And then it does some pagination if it comes back, which you can set manually. If you don't set it and there's no data in there, you can ignore that part, okay? But the data part was the important. Okay, let's have this return some of our skills. That's our point here, all right? We're gonna go, I'm gonna cheat on this. I am gonna go over here to my former one, and I'm gonna open up our models, and I'm gonna open up skills, and I am not gonna use that one because that's not the data that I was expecting. What do I do with it? API, CFCamp 2, models. All right, haven't made it yet. That's fine. We'll go ahead and make our own because we can do that. No, I'm gonna copy and paste. Give me 1 second, sorry. Not Ninja demo, not what I wanted. Ninja site API, here we go. Models, skills. Again, not what I was expecting. You know what? We're just gonna make it up. Okay? What I want to return here is no longer hi, okay? What I wanna do is I'm gonna make a model. Now, a model is different than a handler. A handler is where you do your initial processing. A model is where you wanna have like the majority of your logic, all right? So we're gonna make this skills service. Now, if you're a purist and a service is only a DAO or something called, then I apologize, but we're gonna do this anyway, okay? I want this to return an array of structs. So I'm gonna make a function here called all skills. It doesn't accept any arguments, and I'm gonna return an array, and in that array, the first one is going to be, these are all gonna be different skills. So the name is going to be box jump. The code that goes along with it, actually this is gonna be a nice name, so box jump. The code is going to be box jump, and that's all we need for right now. And I'm going to add about 2 or 3 more of these. This is going to be rings. This is going to be the vault. Okay. And I need a comma at the end of that. And, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we have a model on here, which is great. And we have our handler here. Our handler needs to be able to talk to our model. So I'm just going to add a property up here. The name is going to be skills service. I can name this whatever I want. It doesn't have to match the name of the CFC. I'm just doing that because I have a very bad memory, and I'm going to remember what this was. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do inject, and that is going to have wirebox, which is the dependency injection part of ColdBox. Give me this, okay? If you don't know what a dependency injection is, talk to because someone that's used it before, anyone from Ortus would be happy to talk to you about it. I just don't want to dive into it now. That's part of that deep dive thing. So picture it basically as a really powerful library that can give you whatever you want as long as you tell you what you want. As long as you tell it what you want in the code. Life stuff is on your own, but the code stuff, it'll give it to you. Okay. All right. I am going to re-init this because I just made some changes in terms of the handlers and stuff. I'm going to re-init it, and I got an error. I got that. Instance not found. Why was that not found? Here's my handlers, there's my models, because I called it skill service. Remember how I said that was going to be easy because I remember what it was? That was obviously not the truth. Okay, here we go. Now, I'm still getting high because I haven't changed over to tell it to give me the new stuff yet. In my handler, I'm going to have this response. I'm going to give me skill service, which up here refers to my skill service model, and give me the results of all skills. There we go. Cool. Save. Let's re-init that, load it up. And now, notice in my data, as I zoom in, okay, now I got all my data back. Okay, so I have all my handler. Now, obviously, everything in the model could have been a database request. It could have been an HTTP call. Could have been something else you made up, whatever. But we have our data back. How am I doing for time, by the way? Okay, all right. We're okay. I don't know what that means, but you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just keep talking until someone pulls me off. All right. Let's go back over to our React app. Okay, so we've made our API, we've checked it out in the browser, we're getting the data back that we expect, we have an array of structs, but now we have to use it to display in our React app, okay? So here we are. This is the part where we're not getting into best practices, we're just gonna make it work, okay? And I'm doing that because some of the React purists are gonna get upset with what I do next, and that's okay, I'll sleep just fine. Okay, we need to make an API call to actually get our data, all right? And right about now is when I also need to point out something else about React. One of the criticisms that the people that use other stuff have about React is it forces people to use really sophisticated, really advanced computer science principles when it comes to coding. And that is true. The thing is, you can use them without knowing what they are, which is fantastic, okay? So a lot of React is built on something called functional programming or a pure function. Okay, which means that nothing in this function should impact anything outside of it. Okay, now if that's kind of a concept that you're not quite sure about, that's fine. It's important. It was more of an asterisk than anything else we have to do. But I'm saying so in here, it doesn't call anything else. You call it, it gives back the HTML. Everyone's happy. But we have to actually make an API call. We have to get data from the outside in order to get this. Okay. Excuse me. Separation of concerns would say that I want my service, my API call, to be in a completely different folder, file, really have everything separated out. And in an ideal sense, that is exactly true. And if I was using sort of a central data store, something like Redux, then I would do that. I'm not. I'm using everything local because of time. So I need to use something called use effect. Okay? And what use effect basically says is render this page, which it's going to do, and if anything happens to change this page, there's a variable change or anything else, after it's done loading, check to see if it should run use effect and do something with it. It's use the effect of the page and do something with it. Okay. There's a lot of higher order functions in React. So notice I didn't pass in a variable per se, I passed in a function as a variable. And here's what we're gonna do. We need to tell it what to listen to. So one of the nice things about this is React will handle all of this. It'll render the page, and then after my use effect, it will then check to see if it has to do anything. If I have a variable that I want it to listen to, I can put that variable in that array, okay? And if that variable changes, it will then re-render the page with the new data, which is fantastic. If I leave it empty, that says just render it once. And I only want this to render one time at the beginning of my app, okay? So here's what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna ignore all the React purists that are gonna have a heart attack in a second, okay? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make my API call right from there, okay? Again, this is demonstration. If you wanna get more sophisticated about it, we can talk later. But I'm gonna use a library called Axios, okay? Now notice also up at the top, we have to import every library that we wanna use or any file from somewhere else in our app is gonna show up at the top in that import section, okay? So it just said import from React, import Axios, and I'm gonna make a GET request. Now, I wanna put an API call in this, and it is going to be the HTTP, what did I call it? Ninja API.local, and I wanna get skills. Cool. Now, I'm gonna have to wait for that to come back. So one of the ways that Axios, which is the library that I'm using to make the call, works is it uses a lot of promises, okay? So I need to do this. Then it's gonna get some data back, and again, I'm passing it a function. What I want it to do, let's just see what we get back. For the moment, we're just gonna hit console and then evt.data. If there's a problem, I wanna put a catch in here. And that is also gonna collect an event, or a variable called event, for lack of a better word on it. And I'm gonna say, if that happens, spit out to the console, error. And then I probably should maybe spit out the actual error so we can help debug, that might be good. And then we're gonna leave it at that. Okay, every time I load this page now, it is gonna come up there and make that API call. Let's see if it works, okay? And we can also see, if we go back over here to there, here is this. I'm gonna open up the Google Tools and see lots of errors on here, fantastic. I'm gonna reload the page, and we see a lot of errors. And the error that I'm getting is blocked by cores, blocked by cores, blocked by cores. And right around now is when you throw your mouse at the wall because you forget to do something in the API call. We're gonna go back over to our command box, and I forgot who was this morning. Or actually, yeah, in the keynote, they were talking about how a lot of the stuff that's built into Lucy is stuff that irritated them, that they actually put it in there to alleviate that irritation. Same thing a lot with the modules that are in ForgeBox, which is the package manager for Cold Fusion, basically. We're gonna install a cores module that basically will handle a lot of these cores calls, and if there's a problem, it'll take care of it. Let's go back over here to our API call. I'm gonna re-init it. Shouldn't make a difference coming from the browser. You only find out cores calls when you're doing it from your actual app. And let's see if that made a difference. Okay, so we're here. Let's go to refresh. Yeah, look at that. We got that back. Okay, here's our network call. It called our skills. We get back this object. There's that data, and here's our array of stuff. Fantastic. Okay, that's what we expect. You know, what? No applause? What? Nothing? Not at all? Come on. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, I'll be here all week. All right. Sorry, I just did that. All right, let's do this. Let's go back over to our app, which is here. Okay, so what happened? We made a call, and then we got our response back, and it dumped it out here, means that we got our data. Fantastic, okay? But that doesn't do us any good because we can't use that dump out in our actual code. How do we get it there? All right, use effect gets wiped out every time that it re-renders the page. It doesn't do it again. It just, or in this case, it doesn't do it again. So how do we persist it? There is a concept called state, okay? And obviously we use it in our Cold Fusion sites all the time. There's the application scope, which is sort of a state. There's a session scope that impacts state. The state is basically the state of things, okay? So in this case, a lot of React is meant to be stateless, except when you need it, in which case it's really nice to have it, So here's what we're going to do. We are going to make const, which if you've used JavaScript, basically means it's a variable that cannot change, not doesn't change, cannot change, okay? It's a constant. And we're going to say skills, which is going to be a variable in our state. And then we're going to pass in set skills. And we're going to spell it right. And that is the function that we're going to use to set our state. And both of those together equals use state, which we're going to import from React. And we're going to give it an initial value, which is going to be an array. Cool. Okay? Now, the response that we get back from here was our data. And actually, the array was located in this event.data. So we're going to say set skills event.data. That is going to put that array that we got, I'm going to point using this, the array that we get inside of our use effect, it's going to set it up here in our state. And once it does that, we'll be able to use it as part of our React app, okay? Let's make sure we didn't break anything. We hit save, go back over here to our app. We're going to reload the page. Fantastic. No errors over here on console. We still have an array. That's fantastic. Good. Okay. There's also a debugger that is really handy if you're going to be using React stuff. It's a plugin for Chrome, and it will show you all the different effects that we have here. And if we look, so I clicked on app. That's our component. Over there, it's a small thing on the top. That's our component. And if you look over here, we have our state, and we see that our array is now part of our state. Perfect. We have our data, came from the API, came back to React, in our state. Now we can use it. Cool. Where are we going to put it? Right here. Excuse me. Okay. What's nice about React also is that it's smart enough to accept HTML. It's also smart enough to accept arrays of HTML tags, okay? Which is really handy because then we can do stuff like this. We put a braces in there to tell it this is going to be a cold fusion call. We're going to say skills, which is going to be our variable that we established up in our state. We're going to map over it. If you guys don't know, like some of the higher order functions like map, reduce, filter, great stuff. Please explore it. We're going to pass in, each time that it goes over, we're going to pass in a skill. I also teach college, and so I kind of throw in some of those basic questions because they think they know a lot, but they don't know that they don't know a lot because whatever. So if everyone here knew map and filter, that was not meant to be condescending. It was just meant to be, hey, go check them out. They're awesome. Okay. There's our skills, and we're going to return. There's our header, and now I forget the name of the keys that we did, code and name. Now, this is something else with JavaScript. Remember that all of when Cold Fusion makes a struct, unless you quote it, it keeps the same case. And who cares with Cold Fusion? Because it's case insensitive. JavaScript is not. It cares about case. So we're just going to make this a capital name. So we're going to put in here skill.name and then close it. And then, if this worked right, okay, great. Okay. Now, we're going to format this a little better. But notice how now we have student name, which was our first column. We have box, jump, rings, and vault. Those are our 3 skills. Okay? Which came from the API. I'm going to add this class name because React makes you use class name, not just class. And we're going to make that table, what is it, bordered space. There we go. That's a little nicer. Okay, cool. How are we for time? 5 minutes. Okay. All right. Fundamentally, that's the heart of most of the presentation. Okay? The point here is, what did we actually do? We created a callbacks API. We created a create React app application. 2 different folders, 2 different things. One's in React, one obviously was in Cold Fusion. Okay? In the Cold Fusion, we added the cores module to handle cores problems, which is really handy. Things like options calls and everything else that come from a browser that come from an app, not necessarily from a browser. Excuse me. We added our routes. Okay? The next step from here would be to add another route for students. And that would make each row that we had would be 1 student. Okay? And the student name would go over here in 1 cell, and so on and so forth. The third step, the third API call, would get all of the students and their scores together. So it would be like Timmy's score in the vault is a 3, whatever. Jane's score in the rings is a 7 or whatever. So we have 3 API calls. We loop over one to get the students' names, loop over the second one. That would then pull out of that structure. Timmy's score in the vault would be this, and that would make our array. What's neat about this, or what's kind of key, let me actually do this as the thing, is because a key concept here is something called a component. And it would make sense, instead of returning this, I would start making a component, okay? And what a component looks like is I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to make, in my components table, finished first. It was a race, darn it. Okay. There's a components folder, and in it, I'm going to make a new JavaScript file, and I'm just going to call that cell. Everything with React, if it's going to be put in here as a displayed on the screen, it needs to start with a capital letter. And I'm going to say const cell equals, and I'm going to put, thank you very much. So I'm going to make a constant cell. It's going to expect some data that I'm just going to call props here, okay? And it's going to return what I have there. I'm going to take that out for 1 second, and I'm just going to say here. And the reason why I'm going to do that is I want to make sure, why do I have an error there? Say that one more time. Oh, yes, I did. Thank you very much. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that's a cell. In my app, I'm now going to say, I can say that I can't type. Okay. Hold on. Export default cell. What that basically is telling my app is that if I have a bunch of stuff in here, make sure that if you call this page, export this. It's kind of a simple way of putting it, but whatever. Okay. Import cell, is that up here? No, because I got to import that. There we go. Okay. And now if I go back and I do that again, notice how I have here, 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 not my actual data. Okay, but the point there was that I pulled in this cell. Why do I care about that? This allows me to break my app up into very small pieces. It also allows me to separate out my components, which may be visual, my view, from other stuff that may be more logic-oriented, which could be my internal controller or my data. That way the visual designers don't touch your code, and they don't want you to touch their visual stuff either. You can also make it very concise and very simple. Here, now I'm going to say, don't show the word here. In app, I'm going to say cell, but I'm going to type in, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to do on cell, data equals skill. Okay. Data equals skill. Props is everything passed into here, which includes my data key. So I'm going to put in props.data.name. And if I did that right, we're going to get back to where we started, which is all the names of all the skills, okay? So that's how we would actually pass data from our main app, and we would use the properties in the HTML to pass in data to the lower components, and so on and so forth. The next step after this, if you do make a site like this, it's simple enough, is getting and using something called Redux. I'm getting a red light, which means I'm done. But those are the basic concepts when it comes to React. Components, API calls, use effect, using state, all that kind of stuff. Any quick questions? Or was that so thorough you absorbed everything? That was amazing. All right, we'll go with that. All right, thanks guys for coming. If you have any questions, have it afterwards, and go from there. Thanks.